Hello and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to this final session of the InnoMatch Growth Services. It is a pleasure to see so many of you here, both the AC awardees and the buyers. Over this past month, it has been a privilege to accompany you throughout this InnoMatch program, supporting the deployment of innovative solutions in real environments and facilitating the dialogue between the innovators and the adopters. This final session is an opportunity to look beyond the pilot phase. While the technical implementation of many pilots has now been complete, the real challenge, the real success, lies in ensuring that these innovations continue creating value after the project ends. Next slide, please. As you all know, this session will be recorded and sent it to you once it is updated to our YouTube channel and the InnoMatch website. All your microphones are mute, but you have the Q&A box to post your questions during the webinar. And once we finalize with the session, we can discuss during the last 10 to 15 minutes about your questions. Okay, next slide, please. All along the program, we have worked closely with both the AC awardees and the buyers. And most of you know that in the recent weeks, we have also held dedicated meetings with the buyers only to better understand their experience, the barriers they encounter, and the conditions that would facilitate a long-term adoption of the tested solutions. Based on these discussions, today's sessions has been designed to provide practical guidance for the next steps after InnoMatch. Our agenda, as you could see, is straightforward. First, Elena will present an overview of the current state of play of the InnoMatch pilots, highlighting main lessons learned from the deployment and sharing a number of general recommendations to support the successful uptake of innovative solutions. Then afterwards, Fiorella will focus on practical strategies to achieve sustainability beyond the pilot, including key legal and procurement considerations that both innovators and buyers should keep in mind. Finally, we will open the floor to questions and discussions, so please feel free to note down the questions in the Q&A box. We hope these sessions provide you with useful insights and practical ideas that you can apply after InnoMatch. And we would like to thank you all once again for your commitment and your active participation throughout this InnoMatch journey. With all that said, I would like to hand over to Elena to begin the first presentation. So, Elena, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Carlos, and good morning, everyone. So, as Carlos was saying, during the last week, we've spoken the InnoMatch program. We've spoken individually with some of the buyers to understand one simple question, that is, what happens after the pilot? So today's presentation is based on those conversations. The objective was not to evaluate the buyers, of course, but the goal was to identify where the pilots currently stand, whether there are any barriers to future adoption, or how we can help you maximize the sustainability of the results. You'll notice that the findings are presented anonymously because the purpose is to identify common patterns rather than individual situations. So let's go for it. And I'll explain a little bit the structure of this meeting. So the interviews were focused on 4 dimensions: to understand the pilot results and the perceived value by the buyer, their procurement intentions, their organizational readiness to do that, and the plan that they have for after the pilot, like the sustainability plans. And these 4 dimensions together tell us whether a successful pilot has realistic chances of becoming a real implementation. So the structure of my presentation is as follows. First, I'm going to share the lessons learned. Second, I will present the risk or the barriers that many buyers are facing. And third, and probably most importantly, I will give some recommendations based on our experience to maximize the chances that the work invested during the pilot actually leads somewhere after InnoMatch. Before that, I would like to come back to the purpose of InnoMatch to remember the big picture, right? The framework we are working in. So in InnoMatch, our goal was never simply to fund pilots. The pilot was the mechanism, but not the final objective. What we intended was to reduce procurement risk by doing this pilot where the buyer could get a sense of what the innovative solution could do for them, to create first commercial opportunities for the EIC companies, and to accelerate the normal or the usual time that adoption takes by doing this pilot testing. So the message is that even if procurement is not part per se of the InnoMatch program, our goal was always to start transitioning into that from a pilot to the adoption of the solutions. So before sharing the results of the interviews, I'd like then to clarify then what do we actually mean by a successful pilot in InnoMatch. So we are, of course, as I was saying, not assuming that you would sign a contract or do procurement before the end of the program, especially considering that the program finishes in 1 month or 2 months by the end of August. We know that takes time and it's simply not realistic, right? You need to get the decision makers on board. You need to have the budget approved, the governance needs to happen. So that's not what we expect. But instead, what we would see as a successful pilot is one that have the following things. First, that uses the pilot data to validate whether the solution actually addresses an organizational challenge within the buyer organization. Second, the one that generates enough evidence to understand the potential value and its limitations. Third, the one that provides the basis for a credible business case that the buyer can create and take to the decision makers, to say, look, this is what we can accomplish if we adopt a solution like this in the long term. And finally, one that allows the organization to make an informed decision about the next steps. So if after the pilot the answer is yes, we want to continue, then the most important outcome of InnoMatch is that the organization has a clear post-pilot plan. Our expectation is that by the end of the program, and that means in the final reports, in the review meeting, you explain what's your roadmap after the InnoMatch program ends, so that the work you've done actually leads somewhere and does not stop here. So with that framework in mind, that's the big picture. I'm now going to present what the buyers actually told us during the meetings. So in this open call and this cohort, we had 23 buyers and we've interviewed 11 of them. Obviously, for the other ones, we keep chasing them, and for sure that we will have their answers soon. But we didn't want to delay this. We wanted to give you a glimpse of the first data. So those 11 buyers, 6 are public, and 5 are private. And the good news is that almost every buyer still sees value in the solution. The challenge is not the lack of interest, the challenge is readiness. The main bottlenecks are not technical feasibility alone, but are organizational readiness and solution maturity. So if we look at the data, we have 2 buyers who are progressing very well towards adoption. Then many of them need further preparation, or the adoption decision is conditional to accomplishing certain things during the pilot, and only one currently sees no continuation. So good news, but still there's work to be done. So what have buyers learned from the pilot? So we see a positive shift compared to the beginning of the program. Before the pilot, many buyers were thinking whether that solution would actually work in the environment. After the pilot, they've kind of saw that that the solution can add value and can work in their environment, but they are now thinking, what do we still need before we can adopt it? So our uncertainty has changed, it has reduced, and that's actually progress, but some questions remains, like, can the solution perform consistently at larger scale? This is because the pilots within InnoMatch, of course, were of medium size, given that we only had 12 months. They are also considering whether there's enough evidence that would justify a procurement, whether it can be integrated into the existing workflows, and what organizational changes are required. And of course, the actual return on investment. It's not only that the solution works, but that the cost-benefit analysis is positive, that the benefits offset the cost, right? When it comes to the common barriers that they faced, we heard 4 recurring ones, and none of them were unique. Most buyers mentioned not only one, but several of them. The first one was organizational, so the involvement of decision makers, the budget uncertainty, and the fitting of the InnoMatch solution with the internal priorities. And the second one was procurement. They need to define the appropriate procedure. This is especially true for public buyers. The timing that takes, that is considerably long, and the maturity of the market, because they don't seem so open about procuring solutions that are not market ready. And later on, we will zoom in on that aspect. Another barrier was technical, like the proper integration of the solution into the organization procedures, the data extraction, and the validation by the IT team. And finally, evidence generation. That is a little bit what I was explaining before, that they would need larger pilots, a stronger performance indicator, and longer observations time before actually deciding on the adoption decision, as InnoMatch at the end of the day was 12 months. That is not a lot, depending on the type of solution and the starting point. Then another trend is the differences between public and private buyers. We saw differences, but to be honest, they were smaller than expected. Of course, for the public buyers, they are more concerned about following the right procedures and ensuring the right governance, because they have longer approval chains and more stakeholders. Whereas for the private, they seem to be more concerned about the return on investment, and that there is a strategic fit of the InnoMatch solutions with their current organizational strategy. But both ultimately need internal champions that advocate for the solutions, evidence, and management support. So at the end of the day, the differences are not as big as one may consider. Another pattern that we saw is that there was missing people there were missing people in the approval chains, let's say. So we also usually saw, and this is obviously super good for assessing the pilots, but not sufficient. We saw users, we saw innovation teams, we saw project managers, operational leads involved. Of course, this is a necessary condition for the pilot, but we also saw sometimes that procurement, finance, legal, the executive management were not involved yet in the pilots. This is, of course, understandable in a way that they do not need to be on the day-by-day decisions of the pilot, on the assessment, on the project management decisions, but they need to be involved from time to time, receive some information about the progress that the pilot is making, so that they can plan for the next step. Because if they only hear about the project once the pilot is finished, adoption will become much harder. So here's kind of our first recommendation: to involve them as soon as possible if you haven't already. Then we also try to identify some good practices. So the buyers making the fastest progress are already doing several of these things, and it's important to do them before the program ends in order not to lose momentum. So the first would be involving procurement before the pilot ends, discussing the budgets earlier, whether there's internal budget, whether you need to secure external budget, whether that will happen within this year, whether you need to budget for the next year, etc. You also need to engage management, as we were saying, plan the next validation phase, define the ownership, not of the pilot, of the adoption progress of the adoption plan. If the project manager that has participated in the pilot is not the person who will decide on the adoption plan, you need an owner, a project manager, let's say, for the adoption to happen. Then you obviously need to prepare the business case so that the decision makers have the right information to make an informed decision. And you need to identify the instrument for the follow-up, whether it's procurement or if it's something else. Some buyers were, for instance, also considering applying to grants with the EIC awardee as a form of continuation. Well, that's something that you may want to consider. So, preparing for adoption. So let's move now from the observations to the actual recommendations. So the first thing we observed is that many buyers were saying that the solution was not technically ready to be procured. And this has led us to think that they are thinking about procurement as conventional procurement, as procuring goods and services that are already available in the market when the solution is already mature, proven at scale, with a lot of market references, where the buyer is certain about what they are buying. However, we need to remember that we are in the EIC Innovation Procurement Program, which means that we are open to doing innovation procurement. That is procurement that is done when the solution is still evolving, when the solution is promising but still needs further validation, even when there's limited real-world evidence. The buyer wants to generate that evidence to reduce uncertainty. So have in mind that when we talk about procurement, it's not only about conventional procurement, it's whether you're willing to do innovation procurement that exists precisely because solutions in the market are not yet perfect. And later on, my colleague Fiorella will give you some hints on how to conduct an innovation procurement process and which instruments are available. Obviously, this is up to you whether you would wait until a market-ready solution is ready in order to do conventional procurement, or if you want to do innovation procurement, up to you. But just to remind you that the benefits of innovation procurement is that by engaging early, the buyers help to shape the solution instead of adapting to whatever eventually reaches the market, right? And as the EIC Innovation Procurement Program, we can support you as and other initiatives as well in selecting the right instrument, defining your procurement strategy, and even drafting the tender document. So if you are willing to go for it, there's support available, and we are here precisely for that. Another important trend was that either you, the buyers, said that, or we inferred it a bit based on the conversation, that there is no governance for the adoption process, what we were discussing before. There is governance, and very good governance for doing pilots with owners, project managers, specific processes for validating the solution, for involving the actual departments, the different departments in the actual testing of the pilot. For that, the buyers are great, I believe. But there is not the same level of governance for what will happen after. So here are some recommendations. So if you have a look at this pyramid here, in order to move to the procurement, there are different layers, right? First, you need the pilot results and the evidence. But after that, you need to build this middle layer that deals with securing management commitment, getting the organization operationally ready to adopt such a solution, and building the business case so that the whole organization and the decision makers are aligned and willing to adopt an innovative solution. So this should not be underestimated because it's something that you cannot miss if you are going to procure or to adopt the solution in any other way. And here, maybe the stakeholders attending the meeting from the buyer's organization, you are thinking, okay, but what can I do if I'm the project manager, but I'm not the decision maker, I'm not the budget allocator, I'm not the contract writer? Indeed, but you are also the pusher, the one that can convince internally the decision makers, because you know who are them, you know which are the approval chains, and you know or can understand what they want to see. So let's say that do not underestimate what you can do, because you are the trigger for the adoption conversations to happen, and we encourage you to take the lead on that, so that your efforts actually paid off after the pilot. So in a nutshell, our final recommendations is that you try to answer these 7 questions before September, before we have the review meetings. So the first one is, did the pilot answer an actual organization challenge, a pain point that you had? The second is, if you generated enough evidence to prove that during the pilot, or if you need additional evidence. The third one is to understand who decides on the adoption and what's important to them, so that when you build the business case, you make sure you consider their priorities. The fourth one is whether there is budget already identified, or whether you need to secure it either internally or externally. The fifth one is what adoption pathway is realistic for you. Will you do conventional procurement? Will you do innovation procurement? Will you do something else as participating in grants jointly? What are your plans, or what can you do? And if you don't have experience, for instance, in innovation procurement, what external resources you need, what support you need in order to make that happen. And then the 6th and the 7th kind of go together. what is your timeline after InnoMatch for the adoption to happen? And how will you keep the momentum? And I refer to the momentum in the sense that you are now having periodic meetings with the company. You now need to deliver results, need to write reports, attend presentations. So you are kind of forced, and it happens to all of us in project, to keep on working on this. But when the program finishes, even if, of course, you can continue collaborating with the company, you don't have that pressure, that external pressure to do so. And there may come other opportunities, other priorities, other projects. So keeping all the stakeholders engaged once the pilot is over, once the program is over, might be not as easy. So you need to come up with a plan and with a specific timeline for that plan. And here, once again, I remind you that the program is not over yet, that the mentors can still help, and that you can use the remaining mentoring sessions strategically. Even if there's no session, we are here for you to answer your emails, to schedule new sessions. At the end of the day, what we want is that the results of the pilots are sustainable and that lead to adoption. And with that, my final takeaway is that the pilot has generated evidence, but now the challenge is turning that evidence into organizational decisions within the buyer organization. The pilot is not the finish line, but successful adoption is. And successful adoption starts before the program ends. So go for it now. Or be silent forever. And that's it from my side. Thank you very much. I leave now the floor to my colleague Fiorella, who will present the strategies to achieve sustainability on the legal side of things.
Thank you so much, Elena. I'm going to share my screen. Good morning, everyone. As my colleague Elena anticipated, my presentation will focus on the legal procurement pathways that enable innovation solution piloted under InnoMatch to transition into sustainable long-term deployment that can bring to the coming adoption. In the first part, I'm going to focus on the public procurement procedure that public buyers can adopt. And in the second part, we will focus more on the private side. So we will examine the contractual models and the relating issue relating to the post-pilot deployment. So let's go through the first section. First of all, before going into detail on the procurement procedure, it's important to pause on one key aspect. The adoption potential of an innovative solution relating to the pilot is closely linked to its level of technology maturity. So understanding the technology readiness level is really important to select which is the best procurement procedure that you can adopt after the 12 months of the InnoMatch program. The technology readiness level, as you know, indicates the level of maturity of the solution available on the market. And it's relating, of course, on the maturity of your solution that you developed during this InnoMatch program. We noticed from the result of the first InnoMatch cohort, that solution that are quite close to the tier L9, so it's the last level, so it's like the ready solution that can be commercialized, are the one most likely to be adopted. Therefore, it's really important to understand what is the solution maturity and then select the right procedure according the tier L. The tier L, so it's quite relating to research and development activities that can be necessary to develop a bit the maturity and to be ready to purchase. So depending on the tier L, different procurement procedure may apply. Given the fact that the program, the InnoMatch program, lasts 12 months, there is no enough time to develop the maturity of a solution during this period of time. So it's important to understand what is the level after these months, to understand if there is a room to develop a little bit more this solution before to adopt the final result. So usually after the PPI, after the deployment of the pilot, the public procurement of innovative solution are the most suitable procedure that the contracting authorities can follow. Here there is a difference between PCP and PPI. Usually for this type of POC, pilot tested grant for the third party, like the InnoMatch program, the most used procedure are the one under the PPI that we are going to analyze in the next slide. Meanwhile, it's important to also highlight that there are some key recommendations to follow before to launch the precise procedure selected based on the tier L. So first of all, public buyers, of course, should follow the principle in line with the procurement procedure. So they should publish the result of this POC or pilot testing, and ensuring the principle of publicity and transparency while ensuring competitiveness. So one recommendation would be to share all pilot results in agnostic way, of course, before launching the procurement, and involve procurement and legal stakeholder early in the process. The pilot deployment does not imply that EC awardees will be awarded the upcoming procurement. Therefore, it's not recommended to assign a direct award to the pilot supplier. But it's important to guarantee the competitiveness and explore the market to understand if there are what are the solution available on the market. But later we will see how we can do this, for example, by launching an open market consultation. For the time being, let's focus on the first procedure that we are going to analyze, which is a combination between an open procedure and a framework agreement. This is the simplest and most open procedure. It's suitable when the tier L is 7-8. So you need to develop a bit more the solution relating to this pilot, and you can have a single procedure that can cover the transition from pilot result to potential scale-up, avoiding the need for a separate procurement procedure. Indeed, you can launch an open procedure, so any interested economic operator may submit a tender directly. There is no pre-selection phase. And then there will be a framework agreement, an agreement between the contracting authorities and the economic operator, in which is they set out the terms for the contract to be awarded over a given period. So you are going to award a contract to the final solution just at the end of the development of the solution that you can have before in the first contract, because there are different contracts that you can activate during the framework agreement. So you are going to select the winner once the solution is fully deployed. Of course, in this type of procedure, the scope, budget, volume, condition are clearly defined up front. And this is a procedure that can guarantee to maximize the participation and the transparency of the result and the economic operator that participated in this procedure. The next one, of course, all these procedures are under the same umbrella, Public Procurement for Innovative Solution, PPI. The second one is negotiated procedure without prior publication. This one allows the contracting authorities to directly engage a single economic operator without prior publication. This is a procedure that should be justified. So this procedure can be activated just in some specific cases. For example, relating to InnoMatch program, in order to purchase the solution developed during this period of time, but just for research purposes, you can opt for this procedure. But of course, this will never cover the production aimed at commercial viability. So you can use just internal for the research purposes, and the TLR is between 7 and 8. Then after this step, if you would like to purchase, to commercialize the solution, to scale up this one, you need to opt for a typical PPI. Exceptionally, you can launch a second negotiated procedure without prior publication if you prove that just that economic operator is able to provide you that solution. So there are not equivalent solutions on the market because of technical exclusivity or intellectual property protection. So we recommend to use this by justifying the motivation in line with the procurement directive under the Article 32. And to disclose, of course, always, as I said at the beginning, the pilot result on the procurement platform, just to show the steps that contracting authorities follow to guarantee the competitiveness and to mitigate the risk of an unfair advantage for the pilot supplier. The next one is innovation partnership. This is the open procedure plus framework agreement. Is a procedure in which you can combine development of a solution, so you can activate the research and development activities and then purchase that solution. But the difference is that in this type of procedure, the TRL is not high. So this should be used when the TRL is up to 7, because there is need to do different research and development activities to reach a good maturity. And then the public authority can act as a first customer and can purchase the solution as the first one, because the solution will be developed during the same procedure, so it's not available on the market. So based on the experience relating to the buyers in the first cohort, the TRL is is higher than 7. For this reason, we recommended the first one as the first one that we analyzed, so the open procedure plus framework agreement, in which you can cover the transition from pilot result to the potential scale up. But let's go forward with the fourth one, the competitive dialogue. In the competitive dialogue, you have a procedure in which contracting authorities, through 3 different stages, can engage a dialogue with the market in order to understand what are the technical specifications they need to know before to launch a procurement procedure. So this is recommended when the solution is ready for the market, but the specifications are not yet refined yet. So there is a need to discuss with the market to understand what are the requirements that they need to have to fulfill their need relating to the solution that they would like to purchase. Here is just a definition. It's a dialogue with the candidates to develop suitable solution before inviting them to submit the final tender and award the contract to the winner one. The last one is competitive procedure with negotiation. It's a procedure allowing the contracting authority to negotiate the terms of the contract with candidates to refine tenders to better meet its needs. So in the context of InnoMatch, the pilot has validated a mature solution, but it remains a niche fit, and the negotiation helps tailor the final offer to the buyer's specific operational need. Here the TRL is 8.9. And the contracting authorities need just to refine a bit more the requirement before to purchase the solution. The other one is the open market consultation. It's just a process in line with the directly that can allow the market, the contracting authorities to know what are the different solutions available on the market before to launch a procurement. We have one specific case in the first cohort, and it's quite useful to select the best procedure and to guarantee the competitiveness. Here are some resources available under the European Innovation Procurement Program. We will share the presentation, so you will have the link later on to go in depth with what I'm explaining. Now I would like to focus on the private side. So having examined the tools available for public buyers, here are the key considerations after developing a pilot solution. So one is relating to the intellectual property, and it's important to define ownership of intellectual property developed during the pilot. And then we are going to examine a bit the different contract model, and last one is liability and compliance. So let's go in depth with how to manage EPRs in private sector. Usually the ownership of brand IP developed during the pilot changed by agreement. So you can have a supply ownership. Usually the EP remains the property of the supplier, and the private buyers can have a grant license to access this solution. Can also be applied also to the public buyers, of course. And this is specific for the software. Then the joint ownership, when EP is jointly owned by supply and buyers. and buyer ownership when EP is transferred directly to the buyers, limiting the supplier ability to reuse it unless specific licensing rights are negotiated. Before formal protection is even in place, suppliers should implement safeguards such as non-disclosure agreement to maintain control over proprietary knowledge before it's shared with the buyers. And their formal protection can be followed this one through patent, trademark, or copyright. It's essential to prevent bad use of innovation developed during the pilot. So patent protect technical invention, trademark protect brand and identity, and copyright protect original expression. Here are 4 potential models that can be tailored to the business model. For example, license agreement best suited when the innovation is a software-based. The supplier doesn't sell the solution, but grants the buyer the rights to use it while retaining ownership of the intellectual property. Format-based contract, payment tied to measurable outcomes, shifting commercial risk from a fixed price to demonstrated performance. So payment isn't fixed but linked to the measurable outcomes defined by the buyer. Then there is the joint development agreement when buyer and supplier continue to develop the solution together beyond the pilot rather than settling into a standard client-supplier relationship. And this, of course, implies a commitment of resources and typically leads to joint ownership of the IP. Then condition purchasing agreement is a collaboration continues with a formal commitment to purchase once a suspensive condition, such as a demonstrated return of investment or commercial maturity, is met. And here are some key points to be considered in the contract model. So always be clear about the IP terms, defining ownership and license rights. Define KPI that also capture integration into the buyer's operational processes, since we know that this is quite a barrier, as well as the technical maturity itself. And then, of course, governing law and jurisdiction clauses are also necessary, especially for cross-border agreements. The last one is to be considered is the risk management and regulatory compliance. Both are about making sure the agreement doesn't just work on paper, but actually, if something goes wrong, can be fixed because there are some specific clause in this in the contract relating to the risk management, like performance warranties. And confirm the solution meets agreed specification, limitation of liability, so a caps relating to supplier financial exposure in case of disputes. Identification clauses is also very important, which protect the buyer from claims brought by third party, for example, someone claiming the solution infringes their IP or defective product. And then a regulatory compliance. So it's discover 3 area. It's really important to consider the different regulation and to include this one in the deployment of a solution. This is one of the most frequently reported barriers after the technical maturity. So consider the regulation, consider certification, so obtaining the relevant one according to your business core, and ensure the data protection law apply whenever the pilot involves personal data. Thank you so much. This was the last slide, and I don't hesitate to ask any question if you have. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Fiorella. I guess we can now move on to the questions and answers. I don't see any in the chat, but if you do have questions, please enter them in there and we will try to answer. And if not, I also have a little icebreaker. So we can play with the raised hand option, and I'll make you a question. If you agree, then please raise your hand. So the question is, how many of you believe your pilot has demonstrated enough value to justify continuing after InnoMatch? If you believe it has demonstrated value, please raise your hand. Okay, 3 hands, 4 hands. That's good news. Okay, 5 hands. Okay, so this, let's say, is aligned with what we saw, that the buyer were seeing value in the solutions piloted. Great. Okay, so now another question. How many of you have already discussing the post-pilot phase internally, if you are a buyer or if you're an EAC company, if you have started discussing it with the buyer? Please raise your hands if you have started. Okay, 5 hands, 6 hands. Great. That means that you are in the process. Good news. For the other ones, I recommend you to do it as soon as possible. Otherwise, we will be losing the momentum, as discussed earlier. And also, it's something that we want to see in the final reports. We know that this is typically completed by the company, but you also need to engage with the buyer and provide an outline of what the buyer is thinking about doing after the pilot. There is a specific section for this in the final report, so please make sure that you consider it when producing it. And third, hand raise game. So how many of you are considering innovation procurement as one possible pathway after the pilot? Please raise your hand if innovation procurement is a possibility. Okay, great. 3 hands. Great. For the ones that are not considering innovation procurement, my question is, if it's not innovation procurement what you are considering, what's the option that you have in mind? If you can either like speak out loud or enter it in the chat. Just to know, because for instance, I'm aware of a team that is, as I mentioned earlier, that is going to apply only to new calls in like grants. I don't know if European or national, but they plan to keep on progressing the solution maturity through that mechanism instead of a direct contract, because it's kind of a win-win for both parties. Is that the case for someone else? Do you have other options in mind? Is something that you don't know yet? You could enter it in the Q&A if you want, and there it will be anonymous. Okay, I see a hand raised from Frederick. Frederick, would you like to share that with the rest?
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay.
In our case, it is the tool has shown a number of good things already, but it contains some parts that are already CE accredited, and that means we can go to a normal full procurement method if the value for the radiologist is high enough. There we can go to full procurement and then do the more innovative parts on the down low and just put them as extra points inside the public pathway. And so we don't have to go for innovation procurement. In this case, we will go, if we choose to go for this, we'll go via the complete public
Perfect.
pathway.
Thanks for sharing. Actually, yes, we've seen that in a couple of interviews. Some buyers that said, okay, the solution is like 90% ready, so we could go for a standard procurement, an open tender, or direct award procedure, but it can be conventional procurement. Then that's great. At the end of the day, what we want to see is that there's some sort of opportunity creation. So we don't want it to be necessarily innovation procurement. It can be conventional procurement. Just we want it to happen. So thanks for sharing that. Okay. Someone else would like to share their experience? I see an answer in the Q&A, and they shared that in our case, well, this is quite specific. It's part of the solution. Okay. Okay, this is more like the buyer is not directly procuring the component, if I got you right, that they are producing, but they need to integrate that component into the product that is procured, actually, that are motors. So they would purchase the whole product and not your individual component. So then maybe, yeah, your process is different in the sense that what you need to do is to convince the motor producers to buy your component, right? That's a fair point.
I just activated the Miroslav microphone, just if you want to develop further about this original equipment manufacturing.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, great. We are basically producing a part for solid-state transformers. Solid-state transformers should be and will be a product of the big players, like cars for Mercedes, BMW, and other. And then we are supplying them with the key component, like motor, like engine of the BMW. That is like our main goal. It's B2B. It's part of OEM component. This is what I want to share.
Perfect. So the key there is getting like approved, let's say, in the supply chain of that buyer of the component, right? It's not that they will procure directly, but that you are an approved supplier, let's say.
Yeah, like tier 1.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much. Okay, I see another answer in the Q&A box, and this is from Incasol. Actually, it was kind of an interesting case. I don't know, Jordi, if you would like to share directly, or if you want me to read it out loud, as you prefer, really. Just let me know.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. As I say, my conductor, my mentor, Anna, and as you say, Incasol is a public entity, and therefore the promotions that are developed are subject to the public contractual law. Then we will work together with the interest math or awareness in order to consolidate their item in the corresponding their window and their characteristics in order to put them in our projects. Our objective is that their solution will be not the solution only from Incasol. It has to be a solution from all the public administrations. Then if these characteristics is in the BDEC, the Bastat of ITEC, the Institute of Construction Technology of Catalonia, then it will be it will have a technical legitimacy, and then it will have possibility to put their solution not only in the constructions of Incasol, if not in all the other administration, public administration. I don't know if I have explained it so well. Sorry.
Yeah, I understand what you mean, Jordi. It's kind of a similar case to Miroslav, but for a public buyer instead of private. It's like in order for them like to be procured, they first need to be approved in that database, right? And that's what you're doing. So later on, when there's a new public tender open, you can actually put the specifications from their product, as like from the product they are building, right?
Yes, yes. I think that the best way to innovate from Incasol is to accelerate the innovation of the startups and not to take the solution that the company bring
Yeah, of
us. We have to put in stress the startup because our housing are for vulnerable people. Then the cost is a key for us. Then we need to stress the startups in order to bring their solution with an available cost.
Yeah, like quality, price, rate,
Quality, price, etc., etc. And this is the way I think.
Yeah, no,
Because
congrats
we
on
have
that.
pilots, and they have the solutions.
Indeed. So I think it's a very good approach, because this work that you've done already during the pilot will last beyond the pilot, because later on, when a new procurement is launched, you may consider solutions like the ones produced. And there is a direct benefit for the company and also for the buyer, because you get to buy things that are more innovative compared to the standards that you were procuring before. So yeah, great initiative. Thanks for sharing that, Jordi, in case it can inspire someone else. Okay, so we are reaching the end of the session. We don't want to take you longer than what we promised it would be, but just our key takeaway is that please start planning for the post-pilot situation now. Don't wait until the pilot has finished, because you will lose momentum. There are different ways to do that, obviously, depending on whether it's a public or a private buyer, depending on the actual product that we are considering, and depending on your organization readiness, I mean, buyer readiness. But there are ways. The important thing is that you make it happen. And if you need any assistance, we are here for you, especially when it comes to innovation procurement. We have a legal team that can advise you or your legal team within the buyer organizations to develop that procurement strategy if you don't have the experience, or if you don't know like about a specific consideration. That's, I think, is my main point, and we remain at your disposal. See you in September for the review meetings. Thanks so much, and have a nice day.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much.
Have a nice day, and as Elena mentioned, see you all in September with the final review meetings. Wish you the best for this last stages of your pilot deployment, or if it is already finished, have a very nice holidays period. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.